All right, friends. So I got finished actually recording part one of this series on how trauma, unhealed trauma, could really be showing up in your business today, and felt really convicted to kind of come back in here and just make a quick disclaimer. Okay. I want to be very clear that not all pain from childhood is what would be clinically considered trauma. And I would never want to like minimize the very deep, devastating things that some people have walked through. And so, in part one of this three-part series, I mention trauma the majority of the time. But what I should have said was pain, hard things, or trauma. Okay. So I want to be really, really clear on that. What I'm talking about in this series mostly is just patterns of that come from unmet needs, emotional wounds, things along those lines, without certain forms of support or safety. And you don't have to go through very dramatic or traumatic things for it still to be affecting you and in your business today. So just want to clarify up front, I should have said again, painful things, hard things, as well as traumatic things, because they can all show up in other areas of our life. So just felt the need to come and clarify. Hey, friends, welcome back to the Jennifer Allwood Show. I'm excited to chat with you today. Okay, so listen, so this morning, Jason and I are sitting in church. We go to the Rock of Casey in Kansas City, and the sermon was not on the topic of trauma, but I've been thinking about doing a couple of podcast episodes or doing an episode on trauma and how it shows up in business, and really felt like this morning I'm to do a series on this topic. And I'm going to do three parts of the topic of like sneaky ways that unhealed trauma is sabotaging your business. And I started with like four ways that unhealed trauma is showing up in your business. And then it became six ways. And then it became, okay, let's do one podcast episode with these five ways, but the sixth one really deserves an episode of its own because it's a big one. But then it was like, but I also had like five more. And so I feel like the Lord is just prompting me to do a series on trauma. And here's what I know to be true. Okay. I have worked with thousands of women in business as a business coach. I think I don't know, at 23,000 women, I think. And not all of them have I worked with closely or even got to know their name, et cetera. But over the course of 12 years, I've worked with a lot of women. Okay. And I see this over and over that what we don't heal in our personal life ends up affecting our business decisions. It just does. And so it doesn't matter how great of advice my team and I give inside of our, coaching group. We still have the inner circle, my Equip 360 inner circle group. It doesn't matter how great of advice and strategy and tactics and, all of those things that we give somebody inside of like the Voxer coaching that we do. There's basically two ways you can work with me. You can still do group coaching with me and get my software, or you can do Voxer coaching with me. But it's always shocking to me that regardless of like the really great advice sometimes I think we give, if a woman is still making business decisions based on the fact that she's still living out of like a place of trauma, she'll do exactly the opposite of what we suggest, or she can't do anything because she gets totally emotionally stuck. And then, she usually gets upset with herself. Why can't I just do this, etc. I am convinced that if more women would get more life coaching and more healing emotionally, it would bode so well for business. There's nothing you can say or do. We can arm wrestle over this all day, but if you are feeling like you're getting stuck in business or you've got some things that are tripping you up, I guarantee you are making decisions out of possibly a lot of situations from your past, probably a lot of it from childhood, and possibly some of it involving trauma. And so I want to talk about this because I think that right now we are living in a culture where words of like trauma could maybe almost be to some degree overused. So I think there's a little bit of a desensitization to it. I also think that it's important that we just be reminded of the fact that trauma doesn't have to mean a major life event. Like I think at one point in my life, I really downplayed all that I've been through in my lifetime, but mostly as a child, as a lot of us, go through things as a child. Because I didn't think that it was like a big enough deal compared to other people's big deals. I think that there was a time when I really thought that trauma meant you lost a parent as a child. You were sexually abused. Uh, I don't know, you know, there's your house burned down. Like, in my head, it was like it had to be a major, major thing. And yes, those are all very traumatic. But then when we actually adopted Ari, because it's interesting, some of you will message me, oh my gosh, what a blessing you've been to her. And I'm like, you know what? But she's been just as big of a blessing, if not more, to our family. Like the other five of us in the house, in the family, have probably learned more from Ari and gotten more from, being her permanent family than she has from us, honestly. And so when Ari first came to live with us, she basically came with a Walmart sack full of clothing, and that's throwing no shade at her biological family or what have you. But just in a whole lot in her background. She was 4 years old. And so in my head, I'm like, I don't know how to parent a child that comes from hard places. It's hard enough to parent kids that come from, our place. How do I parent a child that comes from hard places? And so we got her into some therapy kind of right away. And are waiting until God says go, because we've had her at therapy another time during the 6.5 years we've had her. And I'm sure that there will be more in our future. But one of the things that came out of a blessing of going to some therapy with Ari right off the bat when we first got her, and again, she was 4, is that her therapist did a really good job of explaining to Jason and I that trauma doesn't always have to be a super big event. Trauma can be rejection. Trauma can be neglect. Trauma can be like chronic criticism. It can be feeling unseen. In Ari's case, she told us, trauma can be having a lack of food, having a lack of consistency, not having electricity. That can all be very traumatic for people. And so I think that that was really eye-opening for me to maybe look at trauma in a completely different way than what I have in the past. And so, trauma is not just what has happened to you, but it's also what's happened inside of you because of what happened to you. Okay. It's not always a big event. Sometimes it's a lack of something, lack of love, safety, words that you needed. But trauma is any experience that completely overwhelms your ability to cope and to make decisions, and it leaves a lasting imprint on how you think, how you feel, and how you respond. Okay. So this is what we are going to talk about today. And before we go any further, I just want to say this. I am not a licensed therapist. I am not a counselor. I'm not a trauma expert. I am a human who's lived 53 years, who has her fair share of trauma from when I was much younger. I am a business coach who has a certification in life coaching. And so I just know firsthand, and I've got dogs running in, just how trauma can really show up. And so if something I share in this series hits too close to home or stirs something up in you, please know that's not a bad thing. It is maybe a sign that God would like to do some work in you and through you, that maybe it would be a good time to talk to a professional, that maybe it would be a good time to address those things, because there's no shame in getting help. And we serve a God who heals. And sometimes he uses therapists, professionals, podcasts to help in that healing. Okay. All right. Thank you, friends. Okay. So there's going to be quite a few different ways that I can tell someone is still probably operating in unhealed trauma as it pertains to business, that I'm going to be talking about over the course of these 3 different parts of this series. Okay. Again, not a therapist. The Holy Spirit has just taught me a thing or two. I've walked through a thing or two. I see a thing or two with having coached this many women. So today I'm going to go through 5 different things that business people do that show that they maybe have some unhealed trauma. And then I believe in the next episode, I'm going to dive deep into self-sabotage. And then I think there are 4 or 5 more I'm going to do in part 3. Okay. So we're just going to see where the Lord takes us. But first thing I want to talk about today is in terms of like a way I know you're still dealing with or operating out of unhealed trauma as it pertains to business, is that you over-explain and you over-apologize. Okay, so this is the woman who can't just say no. This is the woman who says, no, I can't, I can't be an affiliate for your next launch because, and then gives 5 reasons why. This is the woman who gets asked to do something in business and again just feels this need to like justify and go into explanation. And you know who you are, right? I have a tendency to do this. It's a need to justify your pricing. It's so maybe you have an arts and crafts type of business and you're at a show and somebody's like starts to question, you're like, dang, you know, these prices, da, 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 and you feel the need to go into overhead, tariffs, cost of all the things. And what you notice is that other people don't do that, but you do that. Okay. Yes, I'm drinking McDonald's unsweetened iced tea. So this is the need to justify decisions or even like explain your success at times and sometimes explain it away. I can remember you guys when I graduated from college and I graduated magna cum laude and people would say something about, graduating with that honor. And I would say, well, it was a really easy college. Well, I was almost 30, so I just took it more seriously than people that were younger. Well, it wasn't that hard of a degree. This is what I'm talking about. Okay. So the reason sometimes that people can do this, the link to trauma is that you were often misunderstood. And you have a deep fear of being misunderstood, or you have a deep fear of being rejected. And so you're trying to prevent that from happening. And what ends up happening in your over explaining, your justification, your, way too many words, your verbal diarrhea, as my husband would say, is that you waste so much emotional energy and it weakens your authority. It weakens your position of power. It actually, I think, weakens to some degree, like your self-confidence and your self-esteem, because a lot of times when you are operating out of an unhealed place, you're doing it. And you say things to yourself like, gosh, why do I always do this? I know I don't have to do this. Why do I always do this? But what your hope is if you're working and operating out of, that place and you're still over explaining and over apologizing, what your hope is if I just give these people a little more context, if I just give them a little more reasoning, maybe then they will understand why I'm making this decision and not only understand, but affirm it and like bless it to a degree. Now, it is just my unprofessional hypothesis that a lot of women who are business owners, not all, but a lot of them are Enneagram 3s or Enneagram 8s, if you know what the Enneagrams are. And I think that this over explaining and over apologizing is especially hard for an Enneagram 3, which is me. And the reason I think it's so hard is because image is very important to us, not coming from a place of like pride or ego, but we are seen as the achievers. We are people that status is more important to us than, like, let's say my husband. My husband is an Enneagram 8. He could care less. When I tell you that man cares less about what people think, he cares less. He gives zero cares. Okay. On the other hand is me. And so we're at extreme opposites on the spectrum. And it's taken us, we've been married at this point almost 28 years. We joke like only 26 happy. But it's taken us a really long time because in his mind, I'm somebody that's just so concerned about what everybody thinks about me. And to a degree, that is valid. But it's because I've been so misunderstood in my past. And it's because I've had a lot of rejection in my past. And so in my brain, if I just give them more reasons why I'm saying no to serving at this event or speaking at this thing, then they won't be mad at me. Then they won't be upset. Then they won't think about me in a certain way. And by the way, none of that is true. We're lying to ourselves. If somebody has decided they're going to think a certain way of you, they 100% will. It does not matter how much talking. In fact, the more words you use, the less your credibility is, honestly. And so if you are someone who is still over explaining and over apologizing, just know there's help, right? But that fear of man, it's coming mostly from a place of like trying to people please in order to, fill in the blank. And that people pleasing is never going to take you to where you want to go. The Bible says that fear of man is a snare, meaning when you are really concerned, I'm going to paraphrase, okay? When you are really concerned about what other people think of the decisions you are or are not making, you're essentially putting yourself into a trap. It's confining you. That fear of man is confining. When the opposite of that is that the Bible says that the Lord draws us out into wide open places. We're supposed to live in a place and be operating out of a place of freedom, options, wide open places, not that confining space. So that's the first one I wanted to talk about today is the over explaining and over apologizing. Get healed, get help, all the things. Okay. Second way that, and then these are in no particular order, that I can tell if you're still operating out of unhealed trauma, is you may be a woman who really struggles with visibility in your business, with being seen. Okay. And I'm going to try really hard to give you lots of examples. I've got so many notes here, friends. And so if you're watching on YouTube and you keep seeing me looking at my notes, that's why. I just want to make sure I don't miss some of these points. Okay. So when I coach with someone who is terrified to show their face on their business, they don't want to be forward facing at all. They don't want to go live. They don't want to do Instagram stories. They don't want any sort of a presence on social media. I wonder, and by the way, this is not cut and dried. None of this is cut and dried. So if you struggle with visibility, it does not mean necessarily that you are operating out of unhealed trauma, but it could be. Okay. And here's some reasons why. And I want you to pay really close attention, because there's going to be some woman that listens to this right now who gets absolutely healed when I say this next couple of sentences, okay? If as a young girl, you were taught to not take up space, if you were shamed for being too much, if you were raised in a household where you were to be seen and not heard, if you were someone who people accused of always wanting attention, always needing the spotlight, if you were told things like, that's not cute, or, always got to be the one that's always trying to get the attention, like things like that, this is probably for you. If you are someone who was perhaps also very heavily critiqued for your appearance, how you looked, how you behaved, mannerisms that you have, if you were always taught to or told to change, shift, don't do that, do that, you may be somebody who possibly struggles with being visible, especially online, as it pertains to your business. And then what ends up happening when you want to shrink down your visibility, hide behind a brand, not show up on social media with the guise of, or under the guise of, oh, I just don't like social media. Stop. You're on Facebook and Instagram for hours a day. Stop with that nonsense. When people tell me, I just don't like social, I like to ask, okay, a lot of times I just ask in my brain. I should just ask them out loud in my coaching groups. But tell me, I want you to literally open up your iPhone right now and tell me the amount of screen time you spent yesterday on social, because I don't like social media. Sometimes for some people mean, I love looking at other people's lives. I don't want to share any of mine on social. And that's a different thing than I don't like social. Because there are some people, such as my husband, who literally off, bye, Jonathan. My husband and his business partner. There are some people who legit don't enjoy social media, and that's okay. To God be the glory. I mean, you do you. But there are other people who want to say they don't like it, but the truth is they just don't want to be visible on it. And I think that it's important that you understand, is that okay for your business, and why do you not want to be seen on it? Is it because you still feel like I need to shrink down, I need to not be visible, I need to hide, I don't want people to see me? Because when your business requires you to be forward facing for it to make money and you're not, then you're still playing small, and so is your income. It's directly related. And so when people will say things to me like, Jennifer, I'm an introvert, so I don't like social media. I'm like, the best people on social media are introverts. I'm an introvert. By the way, not saying I'm one of the best people on social media. But I did meet a woman the other day who's like, I just love following you on social. We were at a kid's birthday party and she was like, I could listen to you all day. I just really enjoy you. I think that people think that that means that I am an extrovert, and I'm not. I just don't. I refuse to use the way that I am wired instinctively by God as an excuse as to also not do the very thing that God is calling me to do. Does that make sense? Okay, let me say that again a different way. If God is calling you to business, then he has fully equipped you to have what it is that you need in order to be successful at said business. He has either gifted you, anointed you, is commanding you to work with what you have, or God will bring you the resources, the people, the cash, the breakthrough in another way in order to be successful in that business. It's not like God said, Jennifer, I want you to be a business coach, and then did not give me anything that I would need to be successful in that area. And by the way, success, we all have a different measure of what that looks like. And so if you are someone who's like, God has given me this business, I know I need to be on social media, but I don't want to be seen. I want you to look at why and examine that. Because continuing to hide and playing small and shrinking, uh, it's not serving God, and it's probably not serving the people that you're called to. I mean, the Bible is pretty clear that we're to like let our light shine before others. And so when people are like, there's no way you're an introvert, I'm like, I absolutely am. But I also am sold out on the idea that this is what God is calling me to in this season, which means that it's okay that I'm an introvert. I think introverts are amazing at social media. I think introverts do amazing at things like podcasts. Why? Because you're just a little bit quirky. Okay. We've all got our things. You guys see me like jacking with my hair all the time. You see me having to drink constantly. There's mannerisms that I have that are weird or quirky or whatever. But to some degree, I think those things on most people are endearing and what makes them uniquely them and interesting. I have a tendency to think that, and this is just me, again, not a blanket statement, but a lot of extroverts do amazing on stage. They do amazing in person. They're great for meet and greets. They're great having live events. I think I'm better on the screen. Not because I'm hiding behind a screen, but because I am so introverted that like physical eyeballs do one thing to me. Knowing that there's going to be thousands of you that listen to this podcast and watch on YouTube affects me zero. And so stop using the way that God created you as a reason to why you can't do the thing that God's asking you to do. I mean, literally, that makes no sense. All right. Let your light shine. If you're struggling with being visible, I want you to figure out why. Okay. Third way that I can sometimes tell, and again, these are in no order, that a woman is still operating out of unhealed trauma is that she avoids making decisions. I have forever said that when you've coached as many women as I have, and of those 23,000 women, let's say, I've only had several hundred in a proximity close enough to me that I really understand their business. I really understand their bend. I really understand all the little intricacies because we're working on a close enough basis, right? They were either in my mastermind, they came to live events. I've had VIPs at my house before. We've gone on, trips to our Airbnb, and we had that in Arizona. So there's only several hundred, right, that I've worked with like on that sort of a proximity. But I have always said that I can tell how quickly or if a woman is going to be successful in business by the degree to which she is willing to try things she's never tried before and make decisions. I've always said that's an indicator because it's the women who have to think through things from 900 different angles and 900 different perspectives and ask 26 of their friends that they don't even like anyway, and they're avoiding making decisions. They are not equipped in this season to grow and grow quickly in business. And I know that that stings for some of you, but there's help. Okay, there's help. I think that it's super important that you understand why you do the thing that you do. And by the way, when I say there's help, I believe that the Holy Spirit in a nanosecond can take something that I say today and literally heal something in your heart, in your soul. Ooh, it makes me cry. Thank you, Lord. In just a nanosecond. I think sometimes we need therapy. I think sometimes we need ongoing therapy. I think sometimes you can do one session with a therapist over a Zoom call and God like breaks something off of you that gives you incredible freedom. Okay. So when you hear me say, there's help, you can get help, this could be fixed. I want you to know that that doesn't always mean you have to go talk to a professional. Sometimes it does, but I also know that we serve a God who is able to heal things like this. Okay. If you'll let him, I think is the key. But I think it does start with understanding where things come from. So if you are someone who just sits on things for way too long, you've got to analyze it from all the angles. You're used to doing a pros and cons list. You like to chew on things for a long time. You want to pray and you want to pray and you want to pray and pray. And you want to pray for a couple of years on that thing. And then you're still praying. And the truth is you're not even praying, but you're just telling people you're praying, but you're over researching. You're asking ChatGPT. You're asking all the people like, listen, this says to me that you really struggle with making decisions. Possibly it's because you've made bad decisions in the past and it was so painful that now you have this incredible fear of messing up again. And so you're thinking in your brain, okay, if I can look at this from every angle, then I will mitigate or, hedge my bets against things going badly in this situation. Let me give you some examples. If you are a woman who is divorced, or perhaps a single parent, or et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I have literally coached women before who are making no decisions in their business simply because they were still beating themselves up for having picked the wrong spouse in the first place, or having gotten themselves into a jam in the first place, or having picked the wrong business partner a long time ago. So now they're making no decisions because in your brain, here's what your brain is trying to do. Your brain is saying, okay, we've been here before where decisions went sideways. And so your brain is desire. Your brain is wired, not desired. Your brain is wired by God to protect you. So sometimes you'll come into a space where you need to make a decision. Okay. Let me give you an easy example. You've got to decide if you are going to do a membership or a course. This is one of the things we are doing right now in my the class that I'm currently teaching. So offer magnet. If you have a hard time and you just keep going around that mountain of trying to decide membership course, and I've given you all the pluses and minuses on both ways, and you still can't make a decision, you're still analyzing, you're still sitting on it. I want you just to look. Have you made decisions in your past that you deem as bad ones? And you're still trying to heal from those. And is that now why you're having a hard time making a decision? Are you instinctively thinking, if I just think about it a little more, because the last time I went into business too quickly with that chick, she screwed me over, I had to declare bankruptcy, da 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 da. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes it's women who have made bad decisions in the past that really get stuck making any decision at all. And listen, we have all made bad decisions. I mean, Jason and I like to joke, we are just one or two bad decisions away from totally blowing up our life at any given point. And so are you. And so are you. So, the same grace with which you give others, can you maybe apply that to yourself? The same grace that God has given you, could you maybe think about applying that to yourself? Cut yourself some slack, friends. We all make bad decisions at some point, some of us more than others. But if that's the thing that's preventing you from making any decisions now and it's keeping you stuck and paralyzed, you've got to get it fixed. I just did a recent podcast on perfectionism, which I think also applies to this topic. It's podcast episode number 548. Could be a good one for some of you if this applies to you to go listen to when we're done. But you can't stay stuck. This is how it impacts your business. You get stuck, you miss opportunities, you suffer from like what they call analysis paralysis. And, the one scripture that I will bring up that I always think about in this case is that faith without works is dead, which essentially means that just like, this is not what it means, but you can't just stay in your prayer closet. You've got to get out and actually do something. You have to make some decisions and allow the God of the heaven and earth to like steer that bus. Lord, I'm heading down this direction. This is the best decision I can come up with today based on the information that I have. If at any point, Lord, I am an absolute knucklehead and this is not your best for me and I'm making the wrong decision, I 100% give you permission to stop this thing. Please do, right in the tracks, and revert me, pivot me, whatever, to the direction you want to take me in. But if you cannot make decisions, you've got to figure out why and get that fixed, okay? Fourth way that I can tell that a woman is often operating out of an unhealed traumatic experience, possibly, is that she undercharges or works for free. Woo! And let me just tell you this, a lot of times it's you ladies who want to say, but it's ministry. I don't know why I just used that weird voice. So let's just forget that I did that because nobody actually talks to me like that because it's ministry. I was just trying to like do a female voice. Okay. I have precious women, you guys, all the time that come to me for coaching. And they want to be generous and they love Jesus. They want to help. And so they don't want to charge. And I'm like, well, then you really don't have a business. I mean, because businesses charge money. And actually, let me go one step further. Businesses actually make money. If you can't generate revenue, then you just got a really expensive hobby. It's the truth. And so 9 times out of 10, it's not that the woman doesn't actually want to make money, because she does. It's easier, by the way, to say, oh, I just want to help, or I feel bad, or I'm just giving back, or I'm just being judged. It's easier to say that than it is to say, you know what, Jennifer? When I was growing up, my parents used to talk so poorly about people with money that now I'm in a position where I feel bad about making money. It's easier to say, oh, I just want to help than it is to say things like, um, I just don't believe anybody's actually going to buy this from me. My self-worth is so low right now that I don't think I can attach a price tag to my coaching or my product. I've got a lot of shame around the idea of making money. I think it's easier just to say you want to be generous and you want to give back and you want to do all the things. Meanwhile, your family's barely making it. It makes no sense, ladies. You got to get this fixed because what ends up happening when you're undercharging and when you're working for free, and all of you that have done this, you will 100% agree with me. You get to a point where there becomes like this, almost like a little bit of a root of bitterness. You get your pissy pants on just a little bit. You start feeling a little bit of resentment. Because the Bible is very clear that God gives us wisdom to gain wealth. The Bible does not say anywhere, don't charge for your business. You want to think that it's honorable to do it all for free? Let me just challenge you there. I think it's very honorable to also make a crap ton of money and bless the heck out of a lot of people with it. I think that's very honorable too. And to a degree more so. Because otherwise it's like this fake humility of just giving it all away for free. I mean, that's precious, but being able to pay for things for other people that can provide them with healing, giving them resources, writing out checks. I mean, adoption, for instance, not free. Turns out not free to buy back a life. Okay? I mean, we're called to like serve the orphans and the widows. How do you do that out of $0? You're thinking that it's so sweet and precious and honorable to not charge people. And I think it's sad. For the most part, you may be able to convince me of a scenario that's different, but I guarantee you there are plenty of ways that you are serving in other ways for free. Okay. People will say to me, do you do any like free courses, free whatever, or if they want to gripe, about the cost of my monthly group or my Voxer coaching. I'm like, do you know how many things I do for free? I have so many freebies, free resources, free opt-ins. I do this podcast 2 times a week out of the goodness of my heart. I don't get paid for this podcast. We make zero monies on advertising dollars. I'm not being sponsored by anyone. This is just me wanting to help some of you. And knowing that a small percentage of you will go to the next level and actually coach with me. Because in your mind, you're like, if she gives that away on our podcast, what's she doing her coaching? I mean, hallelujah. To God be the glory. I feel $0 or feel zero remorse, zero regret, zero guilt, zero anything about making money and making a lot of it. Nothing. In my brain, the more I make, the more I can give. The more I make, the more I can impact. If you are not to that place of freedom, and by the way, I still have areas I am working on because there apparently is like a certain number, but I'm okay with making up to this. But apparently over that, I get a little something, something. I don't know what, but I can tell because I haven't been able to get past that. Does that make sense? And so for you, that may be, the 6-figure mark, could be the $1 million mark, could be the $5 million mark. I don't know what it is, but I'm just saying fix it. Okay. Because it is one thing, and I say this with so much like love and respect in my heart. Okay. But I have to tell myself that my parents probably did the best they could with the information and the resources and the knowledge that they had at the time. By the way, I want my kids to give me the same grace. If you don't think that I'm not jacking up my children in some way as we speak, Jason and I are doing the very best we can with the information that we have, with what we know and the resources we have on any given day. But nobody gets out of childhood without some stuff. I mean, the Bible is so clear that it rains on the just and the unjust. We all are going to go through things on this side of heaven. And that includes going through things as a child. Maybe it was parents. Maybe it was church hurt. Maybe it was a coach. Maybe it was an encounter with a stranger. Maybe it was all of the above. But you get to a point where you can no longer blame things in your adulthood, and because you haven't taken responsibility for the healing piece of it. Listen, you're not responsible for what happened to you, but you are responsible with how you deal with it as an adult. But it's so easy for people just to blame their decisions in their 30s, 40s, and 50s on the way that they were raised, how their parents did things, etc. You get to a point where I'm like, friend, baby girl, you got to get past that. Get yourself some healing. Oh, I can't afford therapy. Then pray. Can I go just one step further? And this is just going to burn someone's butter. That's okay. God loves me. Jason and I, when we feel called to give in certain ways, we try to be very obedient to that. We don't always get it right, but we are intentional. And so there was someone several years ago that I felt like we were supposed to just offer to cover any sort of therapy or counseling that they went to for as long as they wanted to. And, they started out a couple times a month, then it was one time a month, and then it was once and it just dwindled. And here's why. Can I tell you why? Some people get so used to just the living out of the pain and living out of that old place and living out of that unhealed traumatic place. And the story that they want to tell to me, to others, to themselves, that they would rather stay there in the traumatic place, in the unhealed place, than get help. And that's sad to me because they've made it into their life story, their life anthem on why things are the way that they are. And you just get to a point where, friend, you got to be like, you know what? There are horrible things that happen every day to people. And it is sad and it is awful. And it is a whole lot of words, heartbreaking. But have you ever looked at like two people that were raised by the same parents, endured the same type of environment, and turned out completely different? You can all think of somebody right now, and maybe it's you and a sibling. You were raised by the same people in the same BS. And yet, one of you went this way and one of you went that. One of you probably got some healing and the other is still living out of it. So I'm telling you, you can serve people and get paid well. They are not mutually exclusive. God gives us wisdom to gain wealth. It even says that we're to use worldly wealth to make ourselves friends that we can influence for heaven. The Bible says that. Money is talked about more in the Bible than what heaven is talked about, forgiveness is talked about, sin is talked about. And I think it's because God knew people are going to get messed up on the topic of money. And it might be time for me to do some more money teachings. If you are someone who would really like that, would you send me an Instagram DM or if you're watching on YouTube, leave me a comment below because this is a topic. I was telling Ava the other day, she asked me, do you ever think you'll write another book? And I said, I've got 3 books in me, baby girl. And I'm counting Fear's Not the Boss of You. I'm not counting the book that went with it, the Get Unstuck and Stay Unstuck, because it was like a little coffee table book. It was almost like a journal that went with it. But I have 2 more books in me. One, I have a title, and I've started the first couple chapters. It is more of a memoir. Um, I have no idea if and when God will ever have me publish that. But I told Ava, I believe I have 3 books in me. So we're going to count Fear is Not the Boss of You. My memoir would be the next one. But the other one would be about women and money because God's given me lots of like grace in this area and I don't know why. But if you are stuck here, you've got to get help. How is your business ever going to be successful, thrive, be able to be, a generational curse breaker for some of you? How is it ever going to get, women out of other situations and help bring freedom to others if it's not making any money? I will never understand. So get help. Okay, 5th way that I'm going to talk about today that I can tell if someone is in business and still operating out of like old trauma is that they have a really difficult time accepting any sort of help, which means like they resist hiring in their business. They have a really difficult time delegating. And a lot of times they'll use the excuse, well, I can just do it better than anyone else. Okay, but probably, and that's also going to keep you really small. So you let me know how that works out for you. Okay. You let me know. Or they even have a hard time asking for prayer. One of the things that we do inside of my inner circle. So if you buy my Equip 360 software, and you can go to equip360.com, if you use my software, you get my coaching. And I still have women who just sign up for the coaching, don't even use the software. That's fine too. Go to equip360.com. It's the only way that I have like a monthly coaching group right now. But we have at least one, if not two, prayer times every single month. And I always have people that request prayer. And I always know in my knower that there are people on this call right now who need it, who want it, and who are having an internal battle with just even asking for it on this call. And I'm going to tell you one of the reasons that people struggle with asking for help. This is something that I have had to battle with my own self. And I know that my husband does too. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of just that will help some of you. Okay. So there are some people who just refuse to like make an ask. And I know, for an example, for me, for a long time in business, I just didn't want to like owe anybody anything. I don't want to ask somebody be an affiliate for me, because then they're going to turn around and ask me to be an affiliate to them. And I don't want to owe somebody. I don't want to owe anybody. I don't want anybody ever having anything over me. Can anybody relate to that? This is like childhood trauma that maybe taught you that a lot of times people or things come with strings attached, or that you can't really count on people. You can only count on yourself. Therefore, don't ask something of somebody because they will disappoint you. Who can understand what I'm talking about here? And so this shows up in business, friends. The whole like, I'll just do it myself is a traumatic response that is rooted deep in disappointment and abandonment. Jason and I have both had, different seasons where we've really had to work hard, because the I'll just do it myself usually means that people who are possibly supposed to be taking care of you, supposed to be looking out for your best interest, supposed to be the ones that loved you most, supposed to be the ones that took care of you the most, they either disappointed or abandoned or rejected you. And so now you're an adult and you're like, not going to have to rely on anybody ever again. And that is really, it's not a healthy place to be. Because in business, then you're going to end up exhausted. You're going to end up micromanaging the heck out of the few people that you will go ahead and agree to hire, but you're going to probably resist hiring. And the truth is like, God never intended for us to do life, and I think business, completely by ourselves. And yes, for a season in the beginning stages, especially, you need to probably be a one-man band, but a lot of people are a one-man band a lot longer than they should be or need to be. And it's not because they can't afford help. But what they'll tell me is, Jennifer, I just can't find anybody. Bull crap. I don't believe it. See, I try really hard not to believe my own BS. So I'm definitely not going to believe your BS. I have a really high BS meter. There's a lot of areas I struggle in, but BS is not one of them. I can tell when you're full of crap. And it's just because God has given me the ability to usually see the reason underneath a reason, which is one of, I think, my strengths as a business coach. When someone tells me, Jennifer, I can't hire help because then I have to train somebody and I don't have time to do that. And then they mess it all up. So then I just end up doing it myself. And I'm like, and I understand that. And still, we're called to not be an island in the stream. That was a great Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers song. It doesn't actually work in life. We are not called to just be by ourselves. You're trying to self-protect. You're trying to self-insulate. You've been disappointed in people before. I get it. Somebody stole your painting techniques and went out on her own and did the thing. By the way, I'm not talking about me. That was not the case ever with me. Also, I don't care. And so, but like people will say, so I had somebody screw me over. So that's why I'm not going to do it again. Okay, well, just because I went to, a restaurant one time and had one lousy experience doesn't mean I shouldn't give it a second chance or should never try it again. You will stay small if you don't get help, friends. You absolutely will. Even Jesus had people around him. He had a little inner circle. He had 12. So you thinking that you don't need any help is usually just a cover up for the fact that help has really disappointed you in the past. Listen, people are going to be people for as long as we're on this side of heaven. And turns out people. And they're going to disappoint you. And they're going to not do it as good as you. That's okay. It's your business. God didn't give the business to them. God gave the business to you. You're supposed to care more than they do. You're supposed to be better at some things than they are because it's yours. But that doesn't mean you're not supposed to get help. And so I want you to really examine if you struggle with that. Is it really that I can't afford help? Is it really that I can't find anyone? Is it really that I can't trust anyone? Like, what is it really?
Because if you have been seriously disappointed by people in the past, or, and by the way, welcome to just being, a human again. If you really struggle with abandonment, like I get it. I get it. Rejection, I get it. I have a biological father that wants nothing to do with me. Been rejected by him and that side of my biological family for going on 54 years. Like I get it. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we don't still keep trying, inviting people in, getting the help we need, et cetera. Get some help, friends. I'm telling you. Okay. I'm going to need to know if this was helpful for anyone, because I think it's one thing to understand why we do what we do, but then now that you know, you're responsible to do something with that information. It's not enough to go, okay, all right, I don't want to hire people because I do have a fear of abandonment. Okay, great. Now, what are you going to do about it though? How are you going to get that fixed? Is that God's best for you going forward? It's not. Is this going to keep business small? 100% it will. Is this showing up in other part of my life? So you bet your booty it is. It's not like, friends, that we've got business over here and life and our personal stuff over here. Everything is intertwined and intermingled. When life is off the rails, it shows up at work, right? I mean, it's very difficult to focus on work when something's going on in your marriage, with your kids, with your parents, in your personal world. So why do we think that the stuff that we've pushed down, the stuff that we've tried to ignore, the stuff that we've said we're actually healed from, but we're really not? Like why do we think that that's not showing up in business? Because it 100% is. Okay. So I hope that that was helpful today. What we're going to talk about on part 2 is self-sabotage. Now, before you say, Jen, I don't self-sabotage, I'm going to challenge that idea with some very specific examples of self-sabotage. So I want you to tune in to part 2, and I want you to listen to that. And then part 3, I've got another 4 or 5 ways I can tell women have some healing that needs to happen. Friends, get help. I'm telling you, when you're inside of my coaching group, I have a woman that I suggest you go to. Outside of my coaching group, I don't know, there's plenty of places you can find online, coaching you can do online, people in your local community. Ask someone, ask a friend, but get the help you need, because you deserve to be free as possible on this side of heaven. Okay. I'll see you on part 2. Bye bye. Easton, the only thing going through my head right now as I record this entire podcast is Simple Man by Leonard Skinner that you and I are going to dance to at the wedding. Literally, we've played that how many times this morning, right? And so I'm sitting here recording this whole podcast, and I just that's literally all I keep thinking about. That's playing in the back of my brain as I'm speaking, of course.